Zoom record. So as I mentioned, in the past week, we have go through well architecture frameworks, and I also have taken note on some of the content and the highlights during we do the test. So if you go on here, you will see all of the materials and the session past recording, and also my Zoom invitation, and extra material like official guide, study guide, adoption framework, simple exam questions, and the link to join the Slack, where I often put all of the materials in, like practice tests and stuff like that. So and if you join this link, so I just since you hasn't been here in the first session, so if you join here and you go to resources, and that is where you will see most of the exam practice questions in, and also other materials relating to like cloud framework and cloud native, such as Kubernetes and stuff like that. So let me pass you around this link. And before going with AWS, I has been training Azure too. So if you are interested in taking like fundamental Azure certificates like DP 900, AI 900, then you can take a look at the Azure training also. But nowadays I do more with AWS. All right. And just started also. So I'm
this is really amazing. It's a good record for me to go through all the links.
Yes, absolutely. And also, if you haven't know, AWS is passing out 50% off on the solution architect exam. So let me show you how. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've got the voucher code for it.
Awesome.
I'm planning to take the exam in the last week of November.
Oh, that's great. So once you pass that exam, then you will have another 50% discount to do all the exams also. So it's a very great time to start with AWS. And I have put a lot of resources in my Slack channel. So because my Slack channel normally is the place for resources rather than chit chatting, I still use the tech career for chit chatting, and just in here, like I put like just a lot of resources that I have access to. So it's easier for everyone to go and take a look and see what's going on. So so have you have any experience with AWS Stack before?
No, I have experience with Azure. AWS, I know the theoretical knowledge. I don't have hands-on experience.
Okay. So in that case, it will be a little bit confused for you to start with the exams right away. What I could do is for this exam, the very important thing is well architecture framework. So you need to start with it before you go into practice questions. So since it's just two of us today, would you like me to go over the well architecture framework so that you have you heard about it?
Well architected framework.
Yes.
Yeah, I have heard about it. It has 4 to 5 sections like security, performance, and the best practices for each of those pillars. They call it as.
Yes, you are right. You're right. So, by the way, these are all of the highlights that I have put, that we have shared in the past session. So, if you see this practice exam review, these are come from the note that we have done in Wiz Labs, and let's go back a little bit on the practice. On the well architecture pillar. Indeed, it's all of the pillars that you mentioned, but how it affect the test? Let me show you. It's very crucial, and you should study how it affect the test very well, because they will really focus on that. So in the question test, they will be asked like, what solution or what components will help you to ensure the availability or reliability, things like that. So when you study on each component, then you need to learn on how each components affect security, reliability, and things like that. So let me go to the material. Okay. I'm not sure if I have passed this in. Let me just pass it just for sure. And yeah, when you start study for this certificate, the most confusing thing would be, I have to say, would be the networking. So you know, if if you haven't have the hand-on experience with AWS first, then that would be the most confusing to study on. Let me hang on. Sorry. Oh shoot, I lost my repo. Okay, let me go back on here, open my repo and post in the note that we had reviewed in the last exam, last practice test. So it's here. So also on here you will find also the practice, you know, like the official guide. So read it well also. So anything that officially on the Microsoft is, I would highly recommend to read it through first. Okay, so let's do some review on this. So you have seen, you have read on this well architecture framework, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So I have a very good videos on O'Reilly where Pearson view instructor explain on, like you know, what it mean by reliability, and you know, like design multi-tier architecture solution. And in here I will tell you that it's normally the 3-tier application, where like you have the web app, you have the database, and you have the networking connection. So you know, building application is normally the scheme on this. So if it help, would you like to have to watch together the well architecture framework together? Then I will start to go back and explain these things first.
Sure.
Okay. So let me do that. Oh, and there's a question bank. So if you would like to go on and sign up for the question bank, here it would be perfect. So let me go on here and start showing you. Just a moment. Okay, so this is the okay. Okay, here. So it will take about 12 minutes for this.
The well-architected framework is one of the single most important areas that you will study for this particular exam.
Can you hear it well?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
It is so important that AWS has actually based all 4 question domains on different pillars that are part of the well-architected framework. And before we go through each of them,
just so you know, don't worry about taking notes because I already take every note that this guy say in the slides, so you don't have to. Just pay very well attention and let me know if you have areas that you are confused with.
Okay.
Those question domains and discuss them in detail, let's talk about the well-architected framework from a more summary perspective so that you can understand how the different pillars fit together. The first of these is reliability. And this is the ability of a system to recover from infrastructure or service disruptions, dynamically acquire compute resources to meet demand, and mitigate disruptions such as misconfigurations or transient network issues. The second pillar is performance efficiency, which is the ability to use computing resources efficiently to meet system requirements. And of course, you're going to be reading requirements and determining what services are going to meet them across all of the questions in this exam. And to maintain that efficiency as demand changes and technologies evolve. The third pillar is security. The ability to protect information, systems, and assets while delivering business value through risk assessments and mitigation strategies. Security is an important enough standalone topic that there is an entire certification dedicated to it. The fourth pillar is cost optimization, the ability to run systems to deliver business value at the lowest price point. Cost optimization is one of the hardest areas to get right in AWS because it's hard to optimize for cost without compromising other areas. The final pillar is operational excellence, the ability to run and monitor systems to deliver business value and to continually improve supporting processes and procedures. So let's talk about these and their associated principles, one pillar at a time. The first is reliability. And there are a number of principles that are associated with it, like testing your recovery procedures. This is going to be a direct mention of disaster recovery and how you design your infrastructure to be able to be replaced if needed. Automatically recovering from failure is actually better than manual replacement and requires some deeper knowledge of certain services. Scale horizontally to increase aggregate system availability. This is a reminder that vertical scaling is really a leftover principle from a traditional data center infrastructure, and that a lot of services in AWS are designed to scale horizontally instead. Next, stop guessing capacity. There are a lot of organizations around the world that spend far too much time on capacity planning because their services are not elastic or scalable enough to be able to increase resources on demand. The final principle for reliability is to manage change in automation. And so you're going to want to learn about different ways of automating deployments and updates for different services and resources in AWS. Performance efficiency is the second pillar and also has a number of principles. The first of these is democratizing advanced technologies. And that sounds like a pretty complicated phrase. What it means is that in traditional IT environments, the IT teams are required to be very conservative with the way that they support and adopt new technologies. They need to become experts in each of those technologies before they can properly deploy them for use by the rest of the organization. AWS is going to take on the overhead of learning these new technologies and making them available so that your support teams do not need to be experts in them. They only need to learn a couple of workflows, enough to be able to use them within the AWS ecosystem. Next, go global in minutes. The ability to deploy into different regions and availability zones without having to provision new data centers is really valuable. The next principle is use serverless architectures. And this is not something that is a strict requirement for all organizations in AWS. It is just a reminder that there are different ways of solving the same problem by reducing operational overhead and using services that deploy using a serverless mechanism rather than relying on traditional OS-based resources. Next is experiment more often. It's a reminder that we can actually have fun working in AWS. It's not just about the day-to-day grind of keeping your infrastructure up and running, but that you should be looking into updates and new services and actually trying them out to see how they work. The final point for performance efficiency is mechanical sympathy. And this is the exact opposite of what happens in most traditional infrastructures. Mechanical sympathy is when your requirements determine the technology that you use to meet them, rather than the other way around. In a lot of traditional environments, you have a very small number of choices for certain workloads. And so the requirements end up being changed to match those technologies that are available. The third pillar is,
I have
and there are a number
more
of
clarity on mechanical sympathy.
Pardon?
Mechanical sympathy. I'm not able to correlate to the real life example, what you meant of requirements determining the technologies.
You mean the security principles?
No, the previous one.
Oh, let me go back.
If you,
sure.
Yeah, this one, mechanical sympathy.
Yes, sure.
You mentioned.
Let me go back to this.
Yeah.
No worry. Okay, so in this section is about the section of the test on performance. So it will ask you about infrastructure and platform as a service. So in here it talk about design high performance architecture. So basically what he wants you to remember, so you have to identify elastic and scalable solution. So all of these are the requirement of the solution architect exam. So I think mechanical sympathy. So let me go back and see performance efficiency in. Okay, so he has identified, yeah, he's talked fast, so that's why I have the transcript here. So mechanical sympathy is when you require to determine the technology that you use to meet them rather than other way around. So basically what he meant is in the scenario, you will be asked, like, for example, you want to achieve the load balancing where you always have to have 5 minimum instance, then what would be the scaling policies that you need to do that?
Okay.
Yeah, so that is just an example that what they would ask you in this performance. Yes, so you will given a scenario. Basically, the test is you given the scenario, and you will work out on what you will do, what you will select to achieve that workload. They will ask you whether the workload is achievable using the current stack, or how you would improve the current planning to meet the reliability, disaster recovering. So all of these pillars are like that.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
now it's clear.
Yeah, no worry. And it will be so after the video, I'll go through with you on some of the networking in AWS. Have you learned about things like route table, VPC, and things like that? Subnet?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't didn't understand them. I went
Yeah.
through those ones, but didn't
Don't
understand
worry.
those.
Yeah, I take like, it take me like a week to be able to understand them also. So let me use this opportunity to help you understand this after introduce you to the well architect framework.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
You have a very small number of choices for certain workloads. And so the requirements end up being changed to match those technologies that are available. The third pillar is security, and there are a number of principles here as well. First is implement a strong identity foundation. There are a number of ways to do this within AWS, either directly or through federation. Next, enable traceability. This is a nod towards monitoring in general, but specifically within a security context. Apply security at all layers. It's really easy to understand how network security can work in an AWS context, but that is not the only way to implement security against your resources and intellectual property. Next is to automate security best practices. Another mention of automation. You need to understand the different services and features within AWS that can help you automate. Protect data in transit and at rest. This is a pretty straightforward mention of encryption, as well as different compliance features that can help you protect your data from being accidentally deleted. Next, keep people away from data. I love that AWS mentions this directly as a principle within this particular pillar. The farther your end users are from the data, the easier it will be for you to protect it, and the less risk there will be from an accidental exposure. The final principle for security is to prepare for security events. This goes back to disaster recovery, but is also a reminder that you need to understand how incident response works within an AWS context. The fourth pillar is cost optimization. And our first principle here is to adopt a consumption model. That means that you are paying as you go and that you are keeping track of how much you're spending along the way. Measure overall efficiency. This goes back to monitoring, making sure that you're not just monitoring performance and resilience, but also how much you're spending as you use these resources. Stop spending money on data center operations. This is another point that I love the fact that AWS puts it right in the principle. Data center operations are never going to grant your company a degree of competitive advantage over somebody else. The best you can hope for is that you haven't broken anything or that you stayed up. Next point, analyze and attribute expenditure. That AWS monthly bill is given to you with an extraordinary amount of detail associated so that you can perform that analysis and understand what is part of that bill. And their final point is use managed services to reduce the total cost of ownership of being in AWS. Migration does not guarantee that you'll spend less over working in a traditional IT data center. But if you do it right, the total cost of ownership for the various workloads will be lower. The final pillar is operational excellence. And there are a number of principles here as well. Perform operations as code. In fact, all of these principles are going to be pointers and reminders that DevOps is extraordinarily important in AWS. If you're performing your operations as code, you're going to have a degree of quality that you just can't match by doing them by hand. Annotated documentation. There are a lot of services in AWS that can help you inventory and document automatically. Make frequent, small, reversible changes. This is another DevOps principle. And if you are deploying a lot of changes at once, the risk goes up and you impact other areas of the well-architected framework like performance and reliability. refine your operations procedures frequently. AWS is an evolving ecosystem. Your infrastructure should also be evolving over time, and that means that your documentation, your policies and procedures will also be changing. Anticipate failure. This is huge. This goes back to incident management and response and disaster recovery. You need to know how you would recover based on the type of operation that's being performed and how it broke. The final point for operational excellence is to learn from all operational failures. If you're not doing this, this involves the post-mortem and learnings report and providing those recommendations back into other teams so that they can improve. However, there are 4 question domains on the exam. Operational excellence is not explicitly covered. You will find questions that test you on different DevOps principles, but it's not going to do it explicitly in the context of operational excellence.
All right, so there's more on that where he explained like which domain will align with in which of the topic of the exam cover, but I had written for you in here so you don't really need to watch the video. So I would suggest let's save the time and go through the networking first, and then later on you can you can go back and read all of the notes that I write here. Is basically what the next video gonna mean. So let me show you one more thing before we go. Yeah, so you can see here like different domain and where he suggests that you need to focus and the percentage of examination and things like that. So yes, and also like more on the domain, and these are all of the information that you can find in the official study guide. Yeah, and in here there's more on like just database and stuff like that. But for you, I think the most difficult will be on the networking. So let me go back to my repo. This even like for me, this is very, very difficult also. So this is not my note. This is someone else's note, but I'll use it and follow the concept here and explain for you on the networking.
Sure.
I need to public my note out. I have a full note of this, and I haven't had time to rearrange it and public it out. Yeah. So let's go first to the concept of VPC. I'll use the content online and show you. And during the time that I explain for you, feel free to interrupt me, because this is very, very crucial for you to understand it well before we move on to any other session. Actually, we only have 2 days. The next week we will move on database. So, in database, again, like networking is also the fundamental. What the difference in database versus the solution architect is in the database, of course, we will focus more on like just the database, how to migrate it, how to design the database, that scale and have the liabilities. So the focus scope will be a little bit different, but of course, all of the things that we talk about today, like networking, will still be relevant in the next session. And the more you, these concepts just take time. So the more time you give for it, the more you will understand it well. So, so you see here, we have the concept of VPC, which is the virtual private network that exists in the AWS. So when you create something with AWS, like when you start an account with AWS even, so all of your content, all of your service will lie in a VPC that belong to you. So everything is still in public cloud, but what VPC is the Amazon Virtual Private Cloud is for you. So I have an idea here. Let me start with the highlight note that I have, so you can, because I don't have any slides, so let me use the highlight that I have in here so that you can understand what I'm talking about, because sometimes I tend to talk too fast, you know. So, and you know, feel free to let me know when I talk too fast. Let me see what book did I use. Yes. Okay, I think I used this one. Okay, so let me go to the highlight. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what I'll use, so at home you can go back and read this note, because I think it go into the further technical details, like, you know, CIDR, the block and subnet and things like that, because you don't have the access to orally. But from today, I'll use orally and also the combination of the pictures, you know, to just show you the concept. And then later on, you can deep dive into some of the more details in here, because the notes on the internet, they are very good for details, but then for general and overview pictures, it's a little bit difficult to imagine.
Okay.
Okay, so on here, as you can see, the VPC is actually your own virtual private clouds, and it's important to note that for VPC you cannot alter the size of it. So if you create a VPC with smaller size and later on realize that you need more IP address, then you need to create a new VPC with a bigger IP address range that might create your application from old VPC to the new one. So why is that? What does it mean by create a VPC with a small size? So the size of your VPC is determined by the IP range that provided through the CIDR block. So you can see here, CIDR block, right? So the size of your VPC will depend on the CIDR block. And as you can see here, let me see. So as you can see here, VPC, you can have multiple VPCs per region. So a max 5 PC per region is the soft limit, so you can request to increase it. And what does it mean by region? I'll show you on the console of my Amazon. So you can see here, I'm sitting at the global view, right? So you can see here that I have 17 region enabled. And if I go to like, these are like the region where your service can exist, you know, and depends on the services. It can, it will have the availability in different regions. So let me select for you, for example, let's go S3 and I'll show you why I go S3. So S3 is actually a global product, and you can see that you know, S3 does not require a region to selection. So you know, it doesn't require have availability in every region. But if you go to EC2, which is S3 is equivalent to Azure Blob Storage, and EC2 is just an instance. And in here you can see that I'm in the region of Singapore, but I have the option to switch region in Ohio, in Virginia, for example. So what I want to highlight for you here is some services are available in the global scale. Some services are available in region scale, and some services availability is in the different availability zone. So let me show you, for example, I think I have that note on my OneNote. Okay. Yeah, I'll work on the publish this note in a few, at least I need at least a week to publish these notes. Let me show you the my cheat sheet. Okay. So, that's strange. Okay, so you can see here, for example, some services like S3, SQS, SNS, the level of availability is or is global, you know, like, so you have no restriction in like selecting a region. But some services, like I just show you EC2, which is instance, it will bound to region. So you know, if you are select to create a EC2 in Singapore, and then you go to hang on, here Singapore, and then later on you switch to Ohio, then you won't see this image because you created in a different region than the one that you create. So that is the concept of region and VPC. You got it?
Yeah, it's some regions it will be available, some regions it may not be, it will not be available.
Yes, and as you can see here, VPC is the outer bound, so it's the biggest box here. And in VPC, you will have like a region, right? This is the second layer, and each region you will have the different availability zone. So you see, like, you can divide it into different zones, and you will have different services that in here. And in each different zone, you will have the subnet that available. As you can see here, like different subnets that available here.
Yeah.
Yes, and how this zone connecting outside, and how this zone to talk with different internet services outside, then you have to create a private subnet and you have to create a public subnet. So every service in the public subnet will have the ability to connect to the outside, and they will sit in the middle to connect you between the private and public. So all of the application when you create is not, it won't go outside, it will sit in the private subnet, and you have to select different network constructs. We call this construct, you know, router, virtual gateway, customer gateway is a construct. So you need to create these constructs so that it can connect outside. Let me find another example. Okay, here's the very basic example. So in here, you can see that in your private subnet, you can have an EC2, which is an instance. You can have your database, and by the way, your database should be sitting on your private subnet. It should never reach your public subnet. And in here, it could contain all of your services that you don't want to expose directly to the internet. So that is logged by that is registered in the route table. And in here, in public subnet, you have like your net gateway, you know, all of the connection that you're ready to expose to the outside world. So that's why it's called public. And then all of the services in the public subnet, you have to go through another one is internet gateway to connect to the outside world. So that is the architecture of Amazon network. And every time, yes, and every time when you have you add a new service, you need to update the route table, and you need to update the route table whether it's the target is local, which is in the private subnet, EGW, which is internet gateway. So I'll show you here. See, EGW, internet gateway. So and as I mentioned, internet gateway will help your VPC instance to connect to the outside. Yes, and the thing that most confused me when I study about AWS is different names of gateway, you know. So you have like internet here. Let me show you. By here, you probably see it better. So we have internet gateway, and you have net gateway, and just interface and gateway again, VPC. So this is VPC endpoint. We have, and then you see the word gateway appear again. So like virtual private gateway, customer gateway. So all of these gateway, you see it appear and appear again. So what I would suggest to you is you have the list, you list down different gateway, and you list the next to it is the purpose of the gateway. So it will help you remember and doesn't mix up with it. And similar to it, you should list down on net and AT and net gateway and how it's different from other services. So have something to compare and contrast with will help you a lot when during study for the network, because this is the hardest component. And as you can see here, like transit gateway, net gateway, direct connect, internet gateway. So all of this here. So let's go through some of the gateway for you to remember first, and then later on, very helpful if you can do the comparison, not comparison, like just list down, one side you have the definition and another side you have the meaning, and list them close together so that it helps you to remember this thing. And I'll go through with you some of the compare and contrast. For example, how network access control list different from security groups, so that you have the compare and contrast for later on. And actually, these concepts are very important for you to remember when you do the exams. I did try to list them down here with some quizzes. So if you go to the channel, you go to the certification prep, and you scroll up a little bit, and you will see on sometimes I ask, what difference between like these services. So my purpose is to help you to have the comparison. And there's another one, I think. Yes, so Alias and Cname, these are all the concepts that related to the network. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this tip is definitely helpful. I will make notes of it.
Yeah,
going
good.
through this.
Yeah, and don't worry if you confuse at first, because we will have to revisit all of these information again in the database for sure, and you will grab more on it. So if you feel confused, don't stress out. Just read it and reread it again a couple of times. You will remember. See, sure. Let's go back on this virtual private cloud. So is basically the list of IPv4 and IPv6 CIDR block, and how you sizing the VPC cloud to have the block that's suitable for you. Then you have to go back on on network design, on how to size, let me see if they have it here, because I'm not really good at explain it. So you see CIDR block here, like different. Let me see if I have this. Yeah, I'm not the best when I explain to CIDR block, but I'll help you to see if these help. Okay, here. So what you need to remember is when you dash 0 mean that none of the bits are blocked. That means like everything is accessible. So when you want to access like everything, all of the IP, then you would use 000 dash 0 like this. Then everything will be accessible. And after that, if you don't allow this, then you will start to get into like different connection. And what the dash mean, that mean like the bit is blocked. So when you increase from 0 to 1, it's half of the size. So you can see here. So can you see my arrow? So from dash 20, sorry, slash, not dash. So slash 20, which is 5,000, slash 19, which is 8,000. So the higher, so the smaller the dash is, the slash is, the bigger the size is.
Yeah, so it is mapping to some of the bits in the IP address.
Yes. So if you slash 32, then it's specifically to only one address, and it's useful for set up a security group, you know, to control to a specific address only. For example, like you only want to allow the SSH exactly from the computer, the personal laptop, well, the desktop that you put in your house to the EC2, for example. So, and you know, if you have the smaller slash, then you will have like more number, more IP address. And AWS, there is a 5 preserved IP address. Let me find that one. Okay, let me actually send it to you. So in here you can see you can see the document of like which IP address is preserved. Okay. So you can see here which one is reserved for which. So I'll leave it for you as your note to remember. So basically, this is, you know, they're not much to talk about it when you just have to memorize by heart. So when you see like .0 is network address, you know, .1 you remember reserved for AWS VPC router. So these you have to learn by heart. There's nothing much to talk about it. Okay, so this link will be very useful for you when you determine the you know, the VPC size and also the subnet for your network. And in the exam, they will ask you, for example, you know, for like for example, if you need like, you know, 50 let me see the question that I encountered this morning. So for example, you need to have like the subnet for three zones, for example, and each zone contain like a certain number of instances. Then what address will you select? So those are the questions where you need to refer back to this question and remember on the sizing. You're good?
Yes.
Okay. Feel free to let me know if you are confused on the VPC and subnet. Okay, so
I got the concepts. I need to revisit them and also understand this CIDR addressing mechanism.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So let's go to talk about a NAT gateway and internet gateway. So as you can see here, so we call this as networking construct. And you can see that some construct is regional level and some construct is availability zone. So what it means is internet gateway is regional. So one PC to one internet gateway. So remember, before we discussed that one account, we have the sub limit of 5 VPC per account, and this is the sub limit. So in each of these VPC, you will have one internet gateway. So when you say you want to create internet gateway, then every availability zone created, there will be an internet gateway, and it's automatically done by AWS. So in the pictures, you only see one internet gateway, but actually all of the availability zone will be able to connect through here. So the, you know, of course, because AWS managed and created, so horizontal scale redundant, high availability, and you don't have to worry about it. So now we go to the NAT gateway, and it's a little bit more complex. So a NAT gateway is availability zone bound. So do you remember the availability zone that we show?
Yes.
Yes. So we have the concept of region here, and each region we have the availability zone. And sorry, just keep talking again and again the same point, but it's very crucial because the more I talk and repeat, the more you will remember after this. And I want you to remember so that the next time you show up in the database class, you're like, I remember this. Jen told me. I'm so sure about this right now. Yes. So before you create NAT gateway, you need to create elastic IP, and it's a public IP address. So NAT gateway help you to connect to the public from the public subnet to outside of the network. So that's why you need to create a public subnet, public IP for address. And remember, again, it's only available in one availability zone. So that's why you need to create one NAT gateway per availability zone. So in here, you see you have two zones, and that means you have to create two NAT gateway. Okay, and we want to keep the NAT gateway in the public subnet only because it helps control the NAT gateway. It helps to connect to the outside network. So you really don't need a NAT gateway in the private subnet. You only need it in the public subnet. Okay, and the important why we have the NAT gateway in the availability zone instead of the regional. So what it helps is that, if we have the gateway in two different availability zone, and I'm talking about the public subnet only, if the availability zone go out, the internet will use the other availability zone if it have the route table. So let me go back in here. So you see here, these subnets connect to the internet. So if one region, one availability zone, the instance in here is down, the routing table, you see the routing table here, will redirect it to the certain availability zone here.
Yeah, failover happens.
Yes, and the internet gateway is sit here. It doesn't do anything. It just helps to connect the internet to your VPC. What redirecting is the route table. So make sure when you create a route table, you need to update and keep it well, because it will help you redirect your internet to all of the subnet inside your VPC. Yeah. Okay, that's good. And in here you have like how to create the NAT gateway. So you specify which public subnet it resides. Again, only public subnet. Specify the elastic IP associated with the NAT gateway, and you update the routing table. So the routing table is where you keep all of the address for routing. So that's the name from. And let me see if okay. Elastic IP. So when you create the NAT gateway, you need to create the elastic IP, and it can be associated with an instance or a network interface, and it helps to redirect the traffic. And you can bring your own. And if you don't have your own elastic IP, and then you can then AWS will provide for you the elastic IP, but then it needs to be associated with some service. Then you don't have to pay. Like for example, it can associate with a NAT gateway, like we mentioned. It has to associate with an instance. So in that case, you don't have to pay. But then if you don't associate it with the AWS service, then you will have to start to pay for the elastic IP. Okay, so that is one. Okay, this one is also important. Vbc endpoint. So a Vbc endpoint allows you to connect the Vbc to your AWS service without help of internet gateway, NAT service, NAT device, VPN, or AWS Connect. So what is the difference of the Vbc endpoint to a NAT gateway? Like why would you want to use the Vbc endpoint? So let me talk through this last point, and then we talk briefly on the security group and Nacl, then we will start the lesson here. Okay. Let me help resize this first so that you can see clearly. Okay. When you want to go when you want to go outside of your internet, when you want to go outside, like when you want to connect to the public internet, like Facebook and things like that, you need the internet gateway and NAT gateway. But however, what if you just need to connect different VPC together, right? Then why would you need to use internet gateway? Let me show you. Here. Let me see if I can show you Vbc Endpoint. It's a little bit smaller for me. Okay, here. Right, can you see it clear? It's a little bit blurry for me, so I'm not sure if you can see it.
It's not clear. It's fine. I can manage with it.
Okay, let me find. Let me see if I can open. Oh, crap. It's really small. Internet gateway. Oh. Okay, let me just use this. I don't have any better picture to show you, but remember this black, red dot over here. Can you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Yes. And so remember where we discussed is S3 is global, so it doesn't sit in actual, in any actual region or anything like that. So of course it still sit in AWS, right? But it's not in specific availability zone or region or anything like that. So it's global. So when you don't want to go to the outside, so when you go outside and you go to the internet, then you still use the internet gateway. So this is the symbol of internet gateway. But when you just want to connect to another services, then you don't need to use internet gateway on net. And on that gateway, you just need to use a Vbc endpoint. And that what is the difference between Vbc endpoint versus the internet and the net gateway. And you can see here like different subnet use Vbc endpoint to connect to S3. And yes, and in Vbc endpoint, there's two different service, interface endpoint and gateway endpoint. And you can read more on that, but basically what I want to show you here. Okay, interface endpoint is there like a long list of service. When you see a question that you're sure that you need to use the Vbc endpoint, remember well on this. AWS gateway endpoint is now only need DynamoDB. So S3 is global already, so you don't need to use gateway endpoint for that. So the only service that it requires is DynamoDB. So anything else beside that DynamoDB, you need to remember about interface endpoint. Yeah, don't worry about take note. Like I'll put this video on the internet on YouTube. You can go to the YouTube channel, same name, Data Hazel. So on my GitHub, there's a link that to connect to my YouTube, so you don't have to worry about, taking notes. Just really pay attention on this. Yes. So anytime when you're sure that the question is asking you for VPC endpoint, and then they give you like whether interface endpoint or gateway endpoint, and remember, if in the question the endpoint is to DynamoDB, and you need to use gateway endpoint.
Okay.
Okay, and there's another type of gateway is egress only. So what you just need to remember is egress only is IPv6, so it's not IPv4. So anything you have to do with IPv6, then you use egress only internet gateway. So when you see the test and they start to mention about IPv6, then remember to associate it with egress internet gateway. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about security group and Nacl. So both security group and network access control list is to help to control the traffic in your VPC. So let me show you this. Oh God, the picture is so bad. Okay, this one is better. So again, you can see the architecture. The internet is go through internet gateway, and then you have router, and then you have routing table. All right. So you can see here, network is sit in the region. It sit in the VPC. It's work in the it's sit in front of the Nacl, and the security is associated to each instance. So if you were to create a EC2, so let me try to create it for you to see. So you select, let it create here. Let's see. Review and launch. Okay, let me just try. So here, in here, you let me show you a little bit on the network of AWS. So you have the network here, you have the subnet, the public IP, you have use the enable use subnet setting. So or you want to auto assign, or you want to use the subnet setting in here. Okay, let's put it there. Review and launch. Okay, here. You see this is the security group, and it attached to each of the instance. And when you launch an instance, there will the alert to tell you that you need to improve the security group with EC2. I haven't like tried to create an EC2 without a security group before, so I'm not sure if it's possible. But I remember from the document that is not possible. So everything, when you create an instance, you need to configure the security group. And when you write like this, that means your instance is allowed to access all of the everything from the internet. Right.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Go back to this. So security group is attached to the instance, as you see, and network associate list is sit on in front of security group. So what it does is it will block the traffic that's coming to your instance. So if the security group is allow the traffic, and network access control list, it deny the traffic. So like in the case, in the situation like you have the DDoS attached, that you will start to use the network access control list to block certain IP address. So, you know, like you see like constantly traffic from a address, you can use it to block. Normally, you don't start to use the network access control list. You know, you don't mess up with it because there's a chance that you will screw up your application. So you don't do anything until a specific scenario or situation where you need to block something. Then you start to use the network access control list. So let me see on if this one is helpful. Okay, so let's go this. Okay, so so in that you can read more on the, I have read on this blog. It's good also. It's highlight on different things like stateful, stateless, and you can see the highlight of what it means by stateful, what it means by stateless, but we run out of time. So I want to highlight on you on the priority. So that because priority is something that you does get asked in the exam. So in security group, deny trump on. So if you have the if you have the address that you don't allow it to access, then you know like everything else could be denied. And in the network associate list, priority trump on. So they process in the priority order. So the first rule, so you know in the list of record, if you have like deny for the address, for example 10.10.10.10, so once they see that order, then they will automatically block that. They're not gonna scan through the whole table and they see like which one you deny, which one you allow. Like the first rule that they match, then they will stop.
Okay.
Yes. So I would suggest that you go to this article and you read more on that. Okay, here. Security group open at instance label. So it's the first layer of defense that we see operate at the sub level. So second layer of defense. So support allow rule only, allows rule and deny rules. So you know, like once you deny or when they meet the requirement, that even if you have the allows rule later on, it will still block that. And here it said about stateful and stateless, where like you know the inbound, where it talk about the inbound and outbound of traffic. Okay, so go to this page and read it more. And one more thing that I haven't had chance to talk with you on network is Cname and Alias. Is also the area that very confusing. So there's someone who already posts on the Cname and Alias here, and you can see my picture on Cname and Alias also. So I'll post some more quiz on the Cname and Alias for you to understand more. So stay tuned. I'll post more quiz on this so that you have the chance to talk more. And if you have questions, ask me or Abdallah. He also leading this channel, so he will also have the knowledge to answer you on this.
Sure.
Let's see, Abdallah, he the guy, just so you know.
Yeah.
Yes, and and one more area that's also important for network is this one is not about network, so you don't have to worry about that. This one, NIY and NA and SA. So review this also. Okay, so that is the main questions. I mean main components for the Vbc and network. Of course, they're more like scaling, and there's like a list of port that you need to remember. I have that in the slides here. You know the first slide. Okay, practice question. me see. Give me 1 minute. Okay. So I list down some of the part for you to remember here. So, these I cannot say much, just remember them by heart, and also read more on like TCP, SSH, HTTP, HTTPS, because I do see some of the practice tests it do ask on this.
Okay, yeah, commonly
Yes.
exposed.
All right. So hope it helpful for you. If you don't understand,
yes, it's definitely
yeah, don't worry about it.
for...
Yeah, even me, like it takes me 2 weeks to start understand this, so don't worry about it. We will review it again and again, so by the time when we're done with the database course, it will help you like to learn about the network and the database component of AWS already.
Yeah, sure.
It's all right.
Yeah, I
So
got some pointers to
don't worry, take
understand,
time.
digest more. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely helpful. It's well time spent.
Thank you. So you have till November to finish with I think you have to register by November, but the test you don't need to take it until December, but the sooner you get it the better, so that you have the discount for all the courses. So you still have time, but have a plan to study and commit to study it every day. For example, solving the each day 5 questions, and you Google it while solving these practice questions could be very, very helpful for you.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So I'll end this lesson now. Thank you so much for coming, and see you next week.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
sharing
much.
the information and the knowledge.
Yeah. No worry. I love help people in get into cloud. Actually, I read one, just sharing with you, is the cloud native skill. So, like just not the cloud knowledge, but cloud native skill is have such, 70% in the past couple of years. So imagine on the huge potential on the upcoming years. And, I'm helping people with AWS now, but whatever the cheapest cloud certificate you can get it. It will be very beneficial for your career.
Yeah, sure. This will be an addition along with the SUSE Cloud Native scholarship opportunity.
Oh, you are in the SUSE course, right? Swiss course.
Yeah.
Oh, that course is wonderful. I wish I have time to complete it. I didn't because I was so busy. But good for you. You already have the good start.
Yeah, it's very hectic. It will pay off in the long run to invest on that.
Don't give up. It will confuse at first. Later on, the more you study for it, the more easier it will be. Yeah. All right. Have a good night, Suman, and see you next week.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have
Bye-bye.
a nice week ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.